All right, let's jump straight into it. Today, we're exploring an incredibly fascinating piece of ancient cultural wisdom. It's an explainer that dives deep into a profound text from the Syriac spiritual tradition. And honestly, it offers a massive antidote to a lot of our modern consumerism and ego. We're going to contrast two very different ways of moving through the world, acting like you absolutely own everything versus acting as a humble steward. This philosophy might be ancient, but you know what? It is unbelievably relevant to how we handle our careers, our wealth, and our families today.
Now, the author immediately hits us with a total pivot from what we might expect. Normally, when we think about threats to a culture or a community, our minds go to loud, physical, external dangers, right? But the text points out that the greatest danger is actually forgetting. It's a silent destruction. When a community loses its spiritual memory, when it literally stops producing its own concepts and loses the ability to think in its native language, its identity just sneakily gets hollowed out from the inside.
So historically, the Syriac community faced incredibly visible threats, like physical destruction and forced migrations. But looking at things today, the primary threat is way more subtle. It's cultural erosion. It's losing the language in everyday life and struggling to pass down core meanings. And this tells us something really important. Survival isn't just a numbers game anymore. It's not just about demographics. It's entirely about cultural transmission. Because if the next generation can't connect with the spiritual memory of their ancestors, the culture simply fades away.
Section 1. Silent destruction and defining the core mindsets.
Okay, so the absolute core of this explainer is understanding the friction between two entirely different mindsets. On one side, you have mutlaq sahiplanme, which translates to absolute ownership. This is that dangerous, prideful illusion that we are the permanent owners of our gifts, our money, or our social standing, and honestly, it leads straight to arrogance. On the other side is emanet bilinci, stewardship or trusteeship. This is the mindset that literally everything we have, from our talents to life itself, is just entrusted to us for a little while to use for the common good. We're going to break down this massive shift from owner to steward by looking at three tangible, everyday metaphors used in the Syriac tradition.
Section 2, Metaphor 1, Hymns as a School. Let's talk about hymns. In this tradition, a hymn isn't just some pretty historical song you sing in the background. Take the famous hymn, Tubi Hymnun Labde Tobe, for instance. The text emphasizes that these didactic hymns are absolutely not meant for mindless repetition. They are quite literally an active school. They're meant to shake us awake from our daily distractions. When you sing or listen to this, you're not just doing a ritual, you're actively learning how to tame worldly passions and actually grow up spiritually.
And this learning process happens in three very specific steps. First up, you have the mindful repetition of deep philosophical and social symbols. Doing this mindfully keeps your inner world completely alert. That brings us to step 2, spiritual awakening and inner empathy. This elevates the mind, freeing a person from selfishness and that toxic desire to own everything, which finally leads to step 3, virtuous communitarian living. So through this structure, faith stops being just a habit and turns into a conscious, life-changing existence that cures human pride. It's a real game changer.
Section 3, Metaphor 2, Stewardship at the Table. Now, let's look at something we all do every day, eating a meal. This theology comes to life brilliantly when you compare the traditional mealtime prayers. The pre-meal prayer, it doesn't say, wow, look at this great food we made. It actually acknowledges that a higher power prepared the table, and it asks for a life-giving blessing, not just physical calories. Then the post-meal prayer thanks the Creator for being the ultimate source of life itself. So sitting at the table, we recognize we are just recipients of life. It completely shatters the illusion that we're the absolute owners of our success, reminding us we don't live just because we work, we live because life was granted to us.
This brings up a pretty piercing question from the Apostle Paul, and it forces us to reflect on our own lives right now. Think about your career, your intelligence, your talents. What do you have that you didn't, on some level, receive? If it's all a gift, a loan, a trust, why do we boast like we manufactured it entirely by ourselves? Truly understanding this brings about a profound sense of humility. It's what makes someone a much more conscientious parent, a more honest business leader, and just a better human being.
Section 4, Metaphor 3, The True Owner of the Vineyard.
So the ancient texts talk a lot about a vineyard, but we're not talking about a literal farm here. It's a metaphor, and it is incredibly deep. Today, your vineyard represents the youth, the mother tongue, your family, your society, and your shared culture. Basically, anything we are entrusted to cultivate and care for, that's our vineyard. And here's the kicker. We are strictly the workers in this vineyard.
We are not the owners.
But of course, there is a massive trap here. The text warns us that the absolute greatest threat to any institution, a family, a business, a cultural group, is when the people in charge forget they are just stewards. When they start acting like absolute owners, they get what's called power poisoning. They stop serving the vineyard and they start dominating it. They swap out loving care for straight-up tyranny. And the really sad part, they often end up destroying the exact thing they claim to be protecting, all because they made it about their own ego.
So instead of domination, what is actually expected of a steward? Well, it's fruit, but not just any fruit. We're talking about virtue, love, justice, humility, and solidarity. And the text makes a really crucial point here. Honesty isn't just reserved for the big, public moments when everyone's watching you. It is a character trait built in the tiny, unseen choices we make every single day. Proving you're faithful in the small things is what shows you can be trusted as a steward of the big things.
Section 5. A fruit-bearing legacy.
Okay, so what does all of this add up to? The core takeaway of this entire explainer is actually wonderfully simple. A heritage is not merely protected, it is kept alive. If we only focus on preserving the past, like a stubborn owner building huge defensive walls around a farm, but we forget to lovingly nurture the people and the culture inside those walls, the vines are just going to dry up. We cannot just guard the ashes, we have to pass on the flame. We have to understand it, live it, and actually translate it into a language that makes sense today.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on today. Take a real, honest look at your own life. Look at your family, your community, your talents. Are you tending to them with a steward's humble grace, knowing they are just gifts entrusted to your care? Or have you secretly fallen into the trap of absolute ownership, maybe a little blinded by pride and the need for control? It is a subtle shift, but for sure, it makes all the difference in the world. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.